So it kind of looks like these are the four areas, but regardless of where your team sits on this quadrant, and maybe by now you've thought about where your team kind of sits in these quadrants, no matter what, all of them need feedback. And it's not like one of these groups gets more or less feedback. They all get the same level of feedback. And I think that this is sometimes where we lose sight. We think only underperformers get feedback because I gotta stay on top of them, when really everyone in the organization needs feedback.
And my question to you is, what do the top two triggers tell you about yourself and the way you lead and the way you show up and what it is that kind of gets your blood boiling as a leader? This is so key for you to know as a leader about yourself. That's what I always tell with my coaching clients. I say, you can't control everybody else, but you can control yourself. So start by applying these sorts of principles and learnings to yourself to say, if I understand how and why I'm triggered, what do I need to do to manage my response better? Because people are going to trigger me all the time, but they are not knowing. But I can do a better job of choosing how I respond. So, what I'm going to teach you now is a quick 3-step process for managing yourself better in the moment when you have been triggered. So, number one, we covered this last week. You guys remember that cognitive strategy of labeling. It's the simplest one there is, which is, we call it name it to tame it. That's just a shortcut, which is basically this: when you find yourself being triggered, I want you to stop, think, which of course engages your PFC. And I want you to say to yourself, you know what? That's just my autonomy trigger, or that's just my certainty trigger. And by labeling it, by actually saying it to yourself, you've had to think, so you've calmed the limbic system, and you've also acknowledged, you know what? Everybody has
It's the
triggers.
same with feedback that we talked about last week. The other thing that I'll note, and I do want Elise to respond to the writing it down comment from Phil, so
Yeah.
we don't lose that, is on the negotiation of what, when I asked Linda, what's your bottom line? Like, what's the smallest thing that you would consider a win? And I got her to say, instead of like, I'm going to come to all these meetings and I want to be she was just like, I just want to be informed. I'm okay to be on a CC. That was like the the minimum that she would accept coming out of the conversation, to consider it a small victory for now. And I think it's, I put some information that's called a BATNA, and it's a in an MBA program, it's a big part of what we all learn about negotiation, but this is more about coming into a difficult conversation and preparing for, okay, Susan wants complete autonomy and she wants to just run the business. Linda probably wants more than she deserves based on the fact that she's biz dev, or based on her role. So like, how do we bring them both to the middle, to an acceptable area of negotiation for both of
Mhm.
them? It's another really great coaching technique that you all can work with your people on, when things are going horribly, like what's the best negotiated agreement we can come to here. Even though this wasn't technically a negotiation, the concept works really well in a difficult conversation.
It's not going to always be perfect. And when you start doing these things, it feels a little clunky, but you'll get a lot better as you go. And I think one of the big things is you begin to realize it's not really that much to be afraid of about having these types of conversations. They're never quite as bad as we think they're going to be. We've all had that one conversation that's sort of ended disastrously, but we've also had most of the conversations were a whole lot better than we thought. And then we begin to think, why in the world was I letting my anxiety or, whatever I was afraid of happening? Why was I letting that hold me hostage as a leader and sort of consume my thoughts and consume my energy? Because basically it was distracting you from much more productive work that you could have been focusing on. And frankly, moving the organization and moving people forward the way that you need to. So the trick there is you have to learn to confront your fear. And you have to be willing to say, I can do this, and I have a way to balance my head and my heart, and I have a process that will help me manage the process so that I will minimize my chances of sort of screwing up in the conversation, and I'll maximize my chances of having a pretty good outcome.